Captain Albatross here again with the Cypher Unlimited crew. We have our usual suspects of AD or Alpha Dean. We have Spigs18 or Anthony. And Dean, what are we doing here today?
Well, guys, I figured we'd probably discuss the most defining part of your character sentence. So we're going to focus on Foci. And Anthony, what's up with that? What do you think?
As usual, for the sake of this discussion, we'll try to break down the use of foci in Cypher System and several different topics and manners. I think the first one we'll probably discuss the importance of choosing the right focus and character creation, how to customize the focus, according to the rules in the CSR, maybe adapting foci to fit any genre that you're playing in. And, should a GM limit foci? That's something that we could touch on. Our personal favorite focuses or foci. And hopefully we could give you some tips on how to create your very own foci from scratch. So I guess, like always, we like to start off with a definition. So Al, take us away with the definition.
Alright, so the definition we got from, the revised Cypher System core book. It is on page 60. And it is as follows. So, focus is what makes a character unique. No two PCs in a group should have the same focus. A focus gives a character benefits when they create their character and each time they ascend to the next tier. It's the verb of the sentence, I am an adjective, noun, who verbs. This chapter contains nearly 100 sample foci such as bears a halo of fire, would rather be reading, drives like a maniac, defends the weak, and pilots starcrafts. These foci can be chosen and used as presented by a player or by the GM who adds them to a list of available foci for their players in their next campaign. Or one shot, as it were. So yeah, guys, let's jump right into it. How important is it to choose the right focus as a player, and how do you normally go about picking your focus for your new campaign or session?
I throw a bunch of focus up in the air, and then whatever I catch, that's what I am. Now I'm just playing. I don't know. This sounds like the cliche answer, but I'm gonna say it depends. Because there's a lot of variables. Sometimes I'm just in the mood to play a particular style of character and a particular focus. Like I might have played it in the previous game, and I either thought I didn't totally utilize the focus as well as I should have, or I had a blast with the focus and I just want to revisit playing that. And then there's, I could be inspired by the genre that I'm playing. I could be inspired by the GM's narrative that makes me want to build on, play a focus I never actually thought about playing after hearing the story pitch. So it really does depend. But I guess ultimately I like to know what story I'm playing in first, and then I'll pick a focus.
And yeah, I think that's really going to be the overarching answer for all of us, because it's always dependent on what the genre of the game is going to be and what the thrust of the story might be. And in the same breath, as a GM, sometimes, I do have a specific list that I want to put forth for the players, because I don't want anything that just doesn't fit or would, throw the game off kilter or take it out of the thematics of what I'm, trying to build on. So yeah, I'm with Anthony. Some foci, just scream out to me, just the title of it alone, and then, and there's some that that I love just reading and have never got to play because I haven't been offered the right game to play them in.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a valid point for probably all of us. Is all three of us here, I should say, is that we look at all these foci, but we don't really have a chance to really play them because we're usually the GMs at the time. But anyways, as far as what I think, as far as this stuff goes, is not only what everything, what these guys says is true, or that's how I see it as well, but something else I like to consider, even though balance does not matter too much in Cypher System, I try to go for something that's kind of different from everything. Like if I'm the last person to decide, like I try to be the last person to decide first of all, um, and then I try to fill in a gap, like a gap I personally see in roles, if that makes sense. Again, it does not matter much in Cypher System because of how the system is. But again, if there's like three fighting type characters, I would definitely want to be like the social or the healer or whatever have you. I like to fill in the gaps of what maybe my teammates are lacking. I know that's kind of metaing it, kind of a little bit, but I don't min max the character I bring to the table. It's just again, I like to fill in. It's more about giving the GM that variety of stuff to work with. If I happen to be a player amongst a group of three fighters per se.
I don't think that's metaing at all. I think that's just actually, being a good player and trying to add to the story, as best you see fit. But I just thought of two more points. The right focus is the focus that you're gonna have fun playing. So, like choosing the right focus doesn't necessarily mean choosing the right focus to be optimized in game, like mechanically. It's choosing the right focus to optimize your enjoyment in the session. And the second thing I just thought of is it's also hella cool to have a random focus and make it fit. Like play a focus that you had, you never thought about playing, never thought about even considering it in this genre, but making it work with a little creativity. And since we all three writers at GM Roulette, we know a little something about making foci fit into a story. So I just want to encourage, our listeners out there that's hella fun as well. Like don't be scared to pick a random focus and make it fit into the game. Of course, if the GM allows.
It's kind of funny that you're going to bring it up because that kind of takes us into the next question. But before I pose it, I wanted to say, in kind of the opposite of Al, the opposite side of the coin, I kind of like, as a GM to sometimes just tell the players make whatever you want and let nobody know and just see what kind of randomized craziness comes to the table. I think that's a lot of fun too. And I also like to do it sometimes as a player. You know what? I don't care what everybody else is making. I just, what haven't I played? What can I get my hands on? So sometimes, and that's the beauty of Cypher, I think. I think the idea of Cypher and the idea of how foci work and how characters work, that what would be considered, a very inept party in Cypher is entirely, or in another game is not in so much in Cypher. So it's just one of those things.
I mean, that's a great method to have, Dean, to be honest, because I think all of us fall guilty, especially if you play multiple systems, in falling in the rut of playing the same style of character.
Right.
Regardless if it's Cypher System, D&D, Rifts, it doesn't, like, and I fall guilty of it. I think it's just human nature. Like back in the D&D days, and I know Al does too. I was always the rogue. Like,
No,
it didn't matter.
I thought you said Al was always the rogue. I was like, no.
I was always the rogue.
And Al was always a paladin.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I played like three. You were always a paladin.
And that's what I'm saying. I've kind of tried to break myself of that habit because in D&D, D&D, I was either a ranger or a monk. That was just my thing, ranger or monk. Those called to me. But I know, like, since I've been playing Cypher System and just with everything that goes on, I've played everything under the sun, and it's kind of cool, especially with the fact that I don't worry about optimizing the party anymore.
I mean, that's also testament to the way Cypher System character creation is designed.
Yes.
Because even if you, like fall victim to playing the same type, like, you always the explorer every game. There's so many ways to make the explorer different and have, be totally different from the last one you played just by changing, the adjective and verb of your sentence, your description, your focus.
What would be cool one day is if we ever did it, we should do it one time and just have a party of all the same type, and then like use flavors and stuff to differentiate them and stuff. I think that might be a lot of fun just to see where it takes us. You know. So with that being said, we're talking about that. Guys, how do you go about adapting the focus to fit the genre you're playing? So let's just say we were playing let's say we were playing a fantasy,
All
you
right.
know, fantasy game.
This is, I mean, this personally is probably one of the most, I get the most enjoyment out of Cypher System. I like taking, I think that's why I love pre-gens and con games, and I love pre-gens and one-shots that people run on the server. You know, I'm like Al, I'm usually the last to pick, and I usually take that one character sheet that no one seems to want. You know what I mean? And I make it work. You know,
So
like what someone sees as, you know, like a hindrance, I see as a diamond in the rough. That you know, it's a challenge. I want to make this character fit and be productive. So
so
you
let me
know,
let me let me hit you like this, Anthony, so you can and continue from here because you already made a good point. Pick any foci, pick any foci you want, and adapt that foci to a fantasy game, a
all right.
traditional
So
fantasy
we
game.
wrote a list of foci, and some of them are fantasy theme. So I'm gonna go with something that's, we have a little list here on our show notes, and I'm gonna go with something that has nothing to do with fantasy whatsoever. So let's go with Pilot Starcraft.
How would you adapt that to
I mean,
uh,
oh, are you asking?
Al.
No, I was gonna
Anthony?
say, well, one
Okay,
way,
whoever. Go
I
ahead.
mean, let Al do some talking. I don't want to be the only guy talking in a minute.
but
I mean,
yeah,
I'll definitely give you an idea, but you know,
I mean, just again, I don't have. I should have right in front of me the exact what abilities you get from Pilot Starcraft, but just based on the title of what it does, or excuse me, of the title of the focus itself, in a fantasy setting, it'd be pretty easy. A Starcraft is something. It's a vehicle that goes far distances. In fantasy, that's usually, what you call it, maybe from one continent to another, maybe not space travel or whatever have you, right? And something that could do that is a dragon. So maybe you pilot a dragon, like, and then you just flavor the abilities from there.
You're a dragon rider.
yeah, yeah. You know, it's funny. I was gonna go. I was gonna say either you're a dragon rider or a griffin rider. You know, and you could, you know, use your warrior. I mean, use your explorer or adept type to, you know, explain how it's you piloting some sort of craft, right? Or we, you know, or we could go the other route and we can make him an adept, and he has some sort of spell that creates an illusionary craft, whatever it is. You
And you
know,
know, guys, and see, I was gonna go totally the opposite. You know, well, not even so much the opposite, but again, we're talking about fantasy. You know, like you said, an adept or a speaker or something. But what if magic is a utility? It's utilitarian. So what if they have airships? You know, like old
Final
spelljammers.
Fantasy.
That's what I'm saying. Old spelljammers.
Yeah.
Or what if, or like Al said, you get into one continent to the next. Maybe they've got some strange, you know, mega boats, or ships that they use on the watercraft. So I'm thinking the same thing, adapting that concept to to your game in a holistic sense. But that's even cooler though. Like you said, let's get on let's pilot a spacecraft, so we just change it to whatever is necessary.
Yeah.
Or we could take it in the literal sense, and he pilots a large starfish, and it's a sea adventure.
Yeah, yeah.
That would
And
be
in
fun.
here, I actually pulled it up, Al. So I'm gonna throw that there so you can take a look. I pulled up the pilot spacecraft, and I'm just gonna paste it here so you can take a look at some of the abilities that you would get, which are kind of interesting. You know.
Yeah, all this stuff is so easy to flavor for, like, not just fantasy, but lots and lots of genres have lots of different things you can turn into a spacecraft, so to speak.
All right, so I'm gonna put your guys on the spot now.
Oh,
I'm gonna take a, and I'm gonna go with, hmm, I'm gonna go with Western, and I'm gonna choose calculates the incalculable.
I mean, I feel like that's a pretty easy one.
Yeah,
Like
you-
in a western, again, I'm not too keen on the titles of tropes or whatever, but it would just be the village or the city or whatever scholar, like, and they're just hyper intelligent. Um, Again, what again? I don't know the western tropes. Like who's the like the scholar type of a western.
Doc, the
Yeah, there you go. The
doctor.
doctor of the town or whatever. Yeah, that's an excellent way to flavor.
Usually the banker
Oh, that's
has
another that's another really good one. Yeah, there's always like
uh,
some sort of
And
financial establishment that's prone to getting robbed. But yeah, that would make a complete sense in a western setting for the banker to be someone who calculates the incalculable.
or calculates the incalculable. What if we have the guy who's the telegraph got his start in the old west? What if this is the guy that's setting up the telegraph lines? Yeah, and even a railroad conductor, or should I say the guy building the railroad, I think would be an awesome person to calculate the incalculable.
I was thinking of a prospector. You know, he knows what tunnels have the best gold, or better yet,
A
he or
miner.
she can tell you what tunnels are about to collapse.
Mm.
Just by looking at them and figuring out, the stability of the structure.
Right, miners.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's actually now that we've all had a chance to chime in about like how we would adapt a certain folk guide to a certain setting, it really brings to mind that it's something to really focus on. Haha, no pun intended. Is that when you're working on getting your focus into a certain genre, is really there's so many different facets that you can take depending on the genre, that it becomes more of like the way I kind of see it is like a game. It's like, how do I get it to fit within the realms of the physics or the reality or whatever of that setting. And again, it's like what Anthony was saying earlier, where he likes that challenge of like trying to make it fit, and that's where this comes in. Because no matter what focus you're given, I mean, some people do like to restrict foci, but pretty much any focus could be, adapted to any setting, barring a few exceptions.
And
Yeah.
what you're
Okay,
saying,
dude.
I was just gonna say what Al is saying makes so much sense, and also in the respects like if we're looking at this as a holistic thing, Cypher System character creation is not overly complicated, but it is very involved because I really think the way it's conceptualized is that we're building aspects of the story before the story ever begins. The characters become integral to your story, and I think if we start looking at it like that, and pun intended, if we focus on that particular idea, it makes the focusing, of the foci that much easier.
Yeah, I think in character creation or even in the session zero, adapting your focus into what the GM, whatever the GM's narrative is, whatever the GM's genre that they wish to touch on, you take that into account, and it's about creativity. I think of a lot of other systems give you all the tools up front. Like, this is what your character can do. This is what is expected of your character. And Cypher System sort of takes a different route, where you have to be creative to fit your character into the story, as opposed to the story has to fit around the characters that you're playing. You
Right.
know, so I think it's a lot easier and should be encouraged to take, out of the norm focus and try to make them fit into the narrative in creative and imaginative ways.
Um,
Well, if you think about it, Anthony, what you're saying, for players, it's it's a bit of a what do you call it? I guess you would say agency, because it gives the players that agency to create whatever it is they're looking to play. And then the other side of the coin, as a GM, especially improvisational GMs, it gives you fodder, it gives you canon to work with, in building your story. So I think it's a win-win situation, because I think Cypher System doesn't approach things, normally. It's
There's
simple.
also a learning factor that comes into
Mm-hmm.
play. That this isn't necessarily something that traditional role players of mainstream games are accustomed to. Not that anyone can't learn it, but it is a skill that needs to be nurtured and learned somewhat.
And
Absolutely.
just to comment on this a little bit before we move on, I haven't played many of other Universal systems, but I feel like that's just sort of a symptom of playing a Universal system. Is that sometimes the abilities or whatever you choose might not fully fit into the setting that's being run with this Universal system. But what I can comment on is that with Cypher System, they just make it so easy to do that.
I would agree and disagree
But
with you
again,
slightly.
I don't have much
Yeah,
experience with the
I think the
other.
majority of universal systems do have a lot more player agency involved in the character creation process. But some systems, like say something like GURPS, the it's pretty hard line. This is what the ability does. There's no deviation
Well,
from that,
and
right?
here I think to kind of bolster what Al was saying, I think maybe you went about it in a little bit of an off way because the thing I'm looking at with other systems, more mainstream systems, is the fact that they have more mechanic heavy. It's mechanics that drive the game. Where Cypher System, the story, the narrative drives the game. So it opens doors for both the GM and the player, and that agency is different if you think about it. You know,
Yeah,
it's not a mechanical agency.
not to hammer GURPS, but I think like in the case of GURPS, their work around it is that they give you massive amount of options.
Mm-hmm.
Like Cypher System might give you 100, maybe 300 foci throughout all the books. And then they give you ways of creating your own foci, which we'll touch on later, or adapting the foci, which we're talking about now. But GURPS, on the other hand, they'll just flood you with a million options. Where we might be giving you 300 foci, or focus. Um, GURPS is going to give you in the thousands of ways
Right.
of building your character. So they both are universal systems, but they kind of tackle it in very different ways.
Well, and then you can look at something that's more modern, not so much as old as GURPS, because like again, like you said, GURPS came from a really an older time and a more mechanical stance. If you look even Savage Worlds, which is an excellent universal system, um, and it kind of has an interesting balance, between the two ideas. But again, like I said, I think it's just that Cipher speaks to building story as opposed to building system or mechanics to tell a story. So, you know,
I mean, this leads into what are your guys' favorite foci to play, and what are your guys' favorite foci to GM for?
I can answer this real easy. For the
Yeah.
well, I'll start with the favorite to play because I don't get to play often, so these are always come to the forefront of my mind. If I get to make a character to play a game, it's most of the time one of these two. I'm not gonna lie. But my two favorites to play are both from Expanded Worlds. I wish I had written down the page number, but it's in alphabetical order. And that would be excuse me. One is from Expanded Worlds. That would be Drives Like a Maniac, which is so phenomenally fun to play. If you don't know what the basic gist of it is, you drive like a maniac. You can do stuff while driving a vehicle. You can take actions. Your vehicle acts like a weapon, I believe. There's a lot of different assets to it. But it's so fun to play because I don't know, there's always something fun about playing the wheelman, playing like the getaway car or whatever have you. I find fun in that. Like it's always some erratic guy who's like drives like a maniac. I just love the phrasing of it too. It's just I drive like a maniac. And my other favorite one to play as would be Craft's Unique Objects, with his I should be still in the in the revised core book. That one is just super fun to me because when it comes to like video games or just games in general, I like playing a supporty type character, if that makes sense. And most of the time with crafting these objects, you can craft things that help yourself, help allies, help the situation. or maybe hinder the enemy. That's another way to help your group, something like that. So craft unique objects was a fun way to just go about doing that myself instead of relying on finding ciphers to do it. Even though usually, depending on the GM, it's usually fairly minimal compared to what ciphers do, it's still very fun for me to have the opportunity to make one or two things during a session.
Nice.
You're muted.
How about the GM for?
You want me to just jump right into GMing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which one do you like to GM
So
for?
for me, for GMing, as far as my favorite one to GM for, and I've only GM'd for this Foci once, or this Focus once, and it was in a play-by-post game. That my one and only attempt at it, which failed horribly due to it just not meshing with my playstyle, was Mixed Prophecy. That focus is super fun. I believe that's also from Expanded Worlds, which is why I had mentioned both from Expanded Worlds before. And that focus, and again, I usually run one shots or whatever have you, so it's usually I only see the tier 1 or tier 2 ability of a focus. I don't dig too much deeper because that's just generally the power level of the games I run. But with Mixed Prophecy, you start off at tier 1 with an ability called Premonition. And that lets the player or the PC ask the GM a question about a location or a character, and it gives you a random fact about the location of the character that's pertinent to what the question is being asked. It also gives you a chance to learn the level, I believe, of a NPC, and there's a couple other facets to it. But what I really found fascinating about that was we were playing a Cyberpunk game. I actually ran it as a one shot, on Sunday. It was super fun. But in the play-by-post game, that character was an interstellar traveler. Excuse me, not interstellar, interdimensional? Whatever, from another dimension. He was an ultra-terrestrial was his descriptor. And it was Voz. It was played by someone on the Cypher Unlimited Discord. It was Bioa, way back when. And I just found it fascinating how he played it, because he basically played it like he had seen an iteration of this timeline, so he kind of knows how things might go because he's seen versions of it, being from another dimension. And I really enjoyed how he played it, and really enjoyed how he used Premonition, because it was never that he got anything super vital from learning, asking his questions, because again, it's supposed to be random. But he was able to use the information given to him to kind of play off the fact that he's getting vibes about a location. Like, it really helped him play his character well, and that's why I really enjoyed seeing it as a GM. Yeah, that's
Nice.
probably my favorite.
I got
favorite
one
GM.
last question to add on to this that I just thought about right now. What focus would you wish you played that you haven't yet?
For me, it would be this one, Makes Prophecy. I want to be the one doing that to the GM, asking him questions and stuff. That's probably it, honestly. I want to play this one sometime.
That's cool. I've never played with or GM, played as or GM someone using that focus. So
I believe also adepts at tier 2 get something similar, or it might be a technology flavor ability called Network Tap, I believe. Costs 2 or 4 int. I think it's 4 int. And it does the same thing, except they can ask a direct question and get a simple answer. Kind of same, kind of different, but yeah, adepts get it too, I believe.
Dean, you want to go or you want me to go?
I'll go ahead and talk about stuff. Now, for me, I'm gonna go answer it in reverse. So, a focus that I wish I had played is actually most of the ones that fall into my favorites category, because I've never really got to play them. But one that I would really like to play, only because it just screams, exactly what it is. Flies faster than a bullet. It's literally the building blocks to play Superman. You can fly. You're super strong. You're hard to hurt. And you're fast too. And it's like, even the little tagline that it is there anything you can't do? So it's a focus that literally, as time goes on, you basically are, Superman. Never had a chance to play it, never had the opportunity to play it. But as far as foci that I like to play or be a player as, um, it's actually two, and that's shreds the walls of the world and throws with deadly accuracy. I actually love throws with deadly accuracy with so much passion. It's such a fun focus, you know, because I just think about, no matter what kind of game I'm playing, if, depending on what it is, I can see how, throwing with deadly accuracy, that means I can pick up a can, twirl it across the room. I'm never, without, they're never without an option in that department. And shreds the walls of the world is it's just fun. I mean, it's just really a crazy, crazy focus because you get to, you know, literally phase and run at the same time. So you can run through walls and objects and stuff like that. It's absolutely cool. You get to be the Flash, if you will.
Let me
Do you
interject
have a
for one
focus you
moment.
like
Oh,
to GM for?
The GM focus that I really dig is which I only got to do once, but absorbs kinetic energy. Actually, I had it a couple of times. Absorbs kinetic energy is a fun one, um, because again, that's one of those kind of options, to see the interesting things people do with that particular ability, because players just think of different things to do that you don't even think about. So I
I also
enjoy
think
that.
that those super powered focus, the ones that give you a lot of top end ability, are very easy to GMI for.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I mean, even and that's something else that I kind of dig about this particular book in general, the CSR. It actually gives you suggested GMIs for that particular power to kind of get you in the swing of things. Because like even like for absorbs energy, it says the energy goes to ground in a destructive way. Some predators defeat directly on energy. An unintended item is drained of energy. So you have some. It gives you three different options for just a weird GMI intrusion. Which I think is kind of cool too.
Al, you was gonna say something before
no, no, no. Just that a player in my game on Sunday, Synth actually, was using shreds the wall. However you say the word, the whole focus name, shreds the walls of the world or whatever
Yeah,
it is. And they flavored it really well for their character. Basically phasing to and fro to do certain things, and yeah, it was awesome.
I guess for me, I kind of mentioned that I like the speaky role playing rogue type. So I think I've probably used this focus the most is work the back alleys. Because I think it allows me to play the sneaky character, but it also gives you the opportunity to use skills that are for persuasion and charm and stuff like that. So it gives me a lot of role play opportunities. And I'm gonna say one that I think a lot of people disagree with because a lot of people tend to think that this foci is underpowered. But I got to play it once in Spoopy's game and keeps a magic ally. I had so much fun with that foci. So I don't understand all the hate for that foci on the server.
I
But
think that's a great. I think that's a great foci
not
focus.
only did it give me the feeling of having an ability like power, having this magic ally that was able to do special things, it also created a RP opportunity with me and my ally that I got to share. I always had the opportunity to RP with someone outside of the group,
Hmm.
and I think the GM appreciates it because it gives them another tool to move the narrative forward. And besides, I got to play like a 10-year-old girl with this magic. You played in that game, Al, I think.
Yep, the MMO
I got to
game.
play this 10-year-old girl with this big, powerful magic being behind me. So I thought it was awesome.
Yeah,
So
it's definitely an underrated one for sure. Due to I just think what is the mechanical benefits, quote unquote, like it could be seen as underwhelming. But again, that's just how some people
I
view
think
things.
part of the reason is that tier one you really don't get much, but the ally itself.
Yeah,
But even just getting the ally itself, it creates RP moments.
Yes.
Right.
And that's what I look for. I don't necessarily look for power. I look for being able to play a character that could add to the story and be different from everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Most
Let's
definitely.
see. I think and I think what you said there is just so full of, merit when it comes to Cypher System, because it's really what you're looking for. Now, the folk out that I picked out, all had a superhero slant because everybody knows that I love superheroes, you know, and so I'm looking at the ones that would benefit my games and the games that I've played in. But what you're saying, Anthony, would actually be awesome in a superhero game. I can see how much fun as a GM you could have with that, and as a player too.
And speaking of which, what's your favorite to GM for? As a
All right.
focus?
My favorite GM4 was actually in my Wild West, some Alien Cowboys versus Aliens game, Consorts with the Dead.
Huh? Nice.
That focus totally changed the way I had to GM the sessions in a good way, because it forced me to come up with multiple angles to attack. Once I knew that we had a character that I couldn't just throw a dead body there and have some sort of mystery. You know what I mean? So I appreciated that focus to make me a better GM.
Nice.
It's
I
definitely interesting.
and I guess the focus that I always wanted to play is Sales the Jolly Roger. I think that's in the
Oh,
CSR. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what it is about that focus, but every time I read it, it makes me smile. So for that alone, I just want to play
it's just the word Jolly Roger.
it.
Like that's such an amazing word. Like,
I want, I want to be a pirate.
but
Now,
speaking,
I would try to figure it in a modern fantasy game. I'm gonna try to
now,
figure to get
we
it in
definitely
there.
have to have someone run a pirate game. I don't think we've. I
now
mean,
you
I
gotta run
kind
big.
of had Big
You gotta
Daddy
run. You
Kraken.
gotta run Big Daddy Kraken again.
Yeah, I do. I
Yeah,
do.
but it's like what we said about adapting. It doesn't have to be a pirate game.
That's true.
I
That's
could
true.
just be a guy. You ever seen Dodgeball? I could be a guy who thinks he's a pirate.
Arrgh.
But anyway, now that we're talking about focus we enjoy to play or whatever have you, right? How do you guys go about customizing your character to fit the exact kind of character you want to be according to the rules of the CSR? Because there's so many different ways to go about it.
I mean, first and foremost, before we even move this discussion any further, you have to have a concept. Like, it's good to think of all the mechanical benefits that something gives you mechanically to be effective in the story. But if you don't have a concept, your character doesn't feel real to the other players. It doesn't feel real to the narrative, and at the end of the day, is not going to feel immersive to you. Yeah, you may be going through the motions, but if you don't have a fleshed out concept of what's this person's desires, what's this person's motivation in the story, you're not going to come up with a cohesive character. So my first bit of advice, before we even customize the focus to make it fit, at least come up with a rough idea concept of what you see this character being in the story.
And just to piggyback off that a little bit, it just becomes super easy to start that way, because once you have a base on what you want the concept to be, you already kind of know how you're going to have to flavor your abilities, or what abilities to even choose to have the base to go from for that concept. So yeah, it is super important to start with that concept first.
Or at least that's how I do it.
No, it's definitely not valid.
I mean, that's real valid. And I mean, because I'm thinking of what you're saying, and it's one of those things that the importance of choosing a concept. So, would you say that the focus should you try to make sure your focus fits your concept? I think that's kind of where it boils down to.
I think what I mean is, if you have an idea, it can narrow it down to several focus that fits your concept. Like say I want to play a snarky businessman right? Who, I want to play a snarky businessman who's really good at convincing people of stuff. So off the top of my head, I could probably list 5 or 6 focus that might work with that. But like we just mentioned a couple, like entertains, works the back alley. There's a couple that you could immediately pull out and be like, okay, these might work. But at least now you're gonna narrow down your search process. Like you
Right.
don't have a million focus that you're looking at. Now you're gonna look at it like 5 or 6 different focus, and then you could start adapting whatever focus you pick to fully flesh out what your idea is.
But on top of that, the book provides a couple of other ways to just go even further in depth on adjusting the character. Once you have that concept, once you have a few abilities picked, there might be ability. Excuse me. Like, let's say you have your sentence completely, for your concept down, character sentence chosen, but for some reason it just doesn't mesh well or whatever have you. You've chosen everything out. It just something's missing, or like it could be better. That's where the additional customization rules of I think they're on page 82. No, that's where the categories are. But there's a rule that allows you to just swap out abilities for other ones. Just maybe it's
I
from
think
the.
that's.
Oh,
I think it's on page 81.
all right, gotcha.
Yeah.
But what I was getting at is, again, like you can swap out abilities for other abilities, whether it would be from the flavor section of the book or just the power category or section of the book, where it lists everything by certain ability powers or whatever have you. Then you just let's say you're replacing a tier 2 ability, then you look at whatever the power equivalent would be. But what I'm getting at is you can completely remove a ability or whatever flavor there that doesn't seem to fit from the base character sentence, and just again choose from the replace it with a flavor, replace it with something else you think that might fit better. It could even be.
Or
Go on.
Would you allow that? I'm
I'm
gonna ask
saying,
this. I'll just ask this question. Would you allow that at tier 1 though?
why not?
Yes, I would.
Because I'm looking at it this way, not just what I was saying about modifying or something to fit the concept. I might even do a whole full reskin. You can take, like, prime example would be like bears a halo of fire. Well, let's just say the person said that what they wanted water related abilities. So perhaps this person had an aura of moisture or something like that.
Yeah, but that's not. All right, that's not swapping out the ability.
So yeah, let me interject here.
That's adapting it and just changing it, flavor wise.
Yo, so
swapping out is I have an ability. I get this ability, and I'm gonna take something entirely different from another foci.
Right.
yeah, so the way I look at it, and I think it makes complete sense, and it's still fair, right? Is let's say someone picks just full on focus. They want to use it right, but the tier 1 for whatever reason ability is underwhelming to them. They just don't like it. It's off putting to them. I see nothing wrong with them going and saying, "Hey, I want to have this focus." Like tier 2 to 6 looks amazing to me. Tier 1, not so much. Would it be okay if I took this low level ability instead, or maybe the tier 1 ability from another focus, and then they can add it. But what I would do in that case is I would rename the focus, because it's not the same focus anymore. Once you change the tier 1 from the book, it's something different.
I actually view it the opposite. I think that I would allow it from tier 2 down, because I think that tier 1 there is a reason why some of those foci gradually increase in power level, because the 3rd and 4th tier abilities are just gonzo. So if you allow them to add a better ability at tier 1, depends on the focus, of course. But I usually the complaints that come from, this is a good focus, but tier 1 doesn't really give you anything. There's a reason why it doesn't give you anything. Is because by tier 3 you're gonzo powerful. You know what I mean?
I fully agree with that. There's definitely some negotiation that has to happen there, because again, depending on what ability they're replacing, I usually, even if it's from like it might not necessarily even be from the same category in the book, like power level wise. What matters to me really is, does it like what you call it, produce either a similar effect or like not a similar effect, but a similar. I'm blanking on I want to describe this. It's kind of like it'll produce the same power of effect. Like it's not exceedingly strong in comparison, or it's not like they can't choose something that's obviously stronger, or whatever. They wouldn't be allowed, at least as me as a GM would have to first argue that it narratively made sense for them to have this first thing at the start, and then two, it can't be something outrageously even different from the focus itself. It would just have to be something, again, that would make more sense for their character to have.
Yeah, I totally understand. I'm looking at it like, say you have idolized by millions. In the first tier, it gives you a follower, right? Oh, hey, I want idolized by millions, but I don't want that follower. I want enthrall.
Yeah, that's a little funny because again, the whole thing is the follower. Like there's certain focuses you can't.
No,
really
but they could argue.
Yeah, no, it's true.
But
it wouldn't. But to me, it wouldn't offset the game because I mean, you look at it this way.
I'm not saying it offsets the game. I'm not arguing that it's breaking the game. I'm arguing
it kind of ruins the spirit of some of the focus, if that makes sense.
Statement. I mean, because enthrall would still work for the same thing. He doesn't necessarily want a follower. He doesn't necessarily want somebody walking around, but he wants to enthrall people. Now, mind you, you can pick up enthrall if he was a speaker anyway. He would get it in. He could actually have it anyway. But he's giving up, say, let's say he's playing, an explorer or a warrior type that's idolized by millions. Maybe he's exactly. Think of it this way. Maybe he's playing a wrestler. Think about Macho Man Savage. He didn't have followers, but oh brother, let me talk to you. He got your attention. So if you were able to give me a good story why he could enthrall people, I wouldn't see a big deal with it. I mean, I'm just looking at,
Yeah, but then why would you take idolized by millions? Is my
Randy Macho Man Savage was idolized by millions. But he just doesn't want followers. He doesn't want groupies hanging out. Some characters don't necessarily have to have.
Yeah, but then you could take something like entertains, or like I would more likely steer them in the direction of finding a foci that fits their concept instead of benefiting from the late tier stuff.
But again, like Al said, that's why you would let that modification happen, and then you'd probably change the name of it to something else because it's not that same focus anymore. Just like if you're looking at when you're looking at CSR, the CSR on
but then it's not customizing focus. It's building
actually
your
it is in the CSR customizing foci. Okay, it says that any tier player can select one of the following abilities and place an ability granted by their tier. So they offer combat prowess and enhanced potential. They offer a lower tier ability. Choose any tier 1 replacement ability and above. Skill with defense. Practice with all weapons. Skill with attacks at tier 2. They offer these different things. So it doesn't change anything. It's just how you're approaching it. It would be just like if I decided to build a focus as opposed to modifying one that's in the book. So, I
definitely see your point. I just think, me personally, I think tier 1... just to follow like the essence of the focus, I don't know. I think the tier 1, you should take what it is on tier 1. If not, we'll find you a focus that better fits your concept, or we build you a focus.
So then in your eyes, then Anthony,
I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying me personally.
I'm just saying the way that you would like it if it was approached or worded. I guess I don't know. I never played devil's advocate here, but I'm gonna do it this time. So like if the person said, "Hey, I want to play idolized by millions, but I want to change the tier 1 focus," right? You say, "No, we're not gonna do that. I would rather not change the tier 1 focus." So they say, "Hey, okay, we're gonna make my own focus, right?" And they say tier 1 I want enthrall, and then tier 2 to 6, and they're just the exact copy of idolized by millions, but they call it something else. That's okay by your eyes in the standards.
No, actually, what I would do is I would do it as a good GM. I would say, okay, what are you looking to do?
Okay,
right?
you would have the conversation. But what if
we're gonna have a conversation now, and then we'll sit down together and find what works for him.
But how would you feel if they came to the table and said, "This is the focus I want to play"?
Because there's other ways of getting enthralled. He could take magic flavor.
Oh no, for sure. There definitely are other ways to do it.
Ways for him to get it.
I'm just curious how you would feel.
We're saying that if he wanted it through his focus, he was.
Dean, I understand what you're saying.
I shouldn't have done this.
I'm not arguing with what you're saying. Like, we don't have to agree. Like,
no, we don't. No. I'm not saying we have to agree. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying, Anthony, is what you're saying is the same thing we're saying. If a person sits down at your table and says, "This is what I want. This is what I'm digging," and then you go, "Well, there's other ways for you to get that." And he looks at you and goes, "But I don't want anything else. I want this." You know what I'm saying? I mean, you know, like you said, you know, you're looking at, you know,
and I'm standing firm by what I said. He could take take one magic flavor off his warrior type to get the enthrall ability. Like, I think,
but you can't, because enthrall is not a magic flavor ability. Enthrall No, it's not on flavor. It's not a magic flavor ability. Enthrall is either a ability that comes from a focus or it's an ability that comes from the type speaker. That's it.
Either way though, I'm not sure. It might be.
Enthrall is not a flavor ability?
No, it is not.
Either way though, what we have to take it here as is, regardless whether it's enthrall or whatever have you, what...
I don't know. I just said enthrall because I know that's an OP tier 1 ability. That's the only reason why I said it.
But what I was getting at was, what we're getting at is, if they wanted to include an ability or whatever have you, from tier 1 of another focus or whatever have you, like, or even like from a type ability, just to flesh out their character exactly how they want it to be, even if it's not found in the flavor section or whatever have you, like enthrall is not found in flavor section, it doesn't really break or anything like that. Again, it's just that you would have to rename it.
I absolutely agree with the both of you that whatever you guys are saying, you know, you does not break. I'm not arguing that at all. I just think that it kind of like the essence of the actual focus
is taken away.
That's all I was saying. Hold the dogs back.
And then for me was just that you can just rename it and it's whatever. It's not it's the spirit or essence of it is whatever you want it to be, because now it's yours.
Those are all great points, but you know, we could go back and forth for hours and we could argue about this for days. Dean, I think you should just move on to the next point of reference.
So so as a GM, should you limit your foci that can be used in your games? You know, do you feel that's a necessity?
It's not a necessity per se. I would say that's a GM preference. Because again, as we've talked about in this video, we're all extremely comfortable with flavoring a certain focus or whatever have you to fit whatever setting we might be running at the time or playing in. We're really good at adapting and making make sense. However, there might be certain GMs who want real solid control over what's happening within the story. So a good example of something like that, like let's say they're running a modern horror game or something, or you know, survival horror, something with a realistic tone. Grows to towering heights is just something that wouldn't make sense no matter how you put it. Like there's no getting around it. It just doesn't fit. So of course it would make sense to exclude something like that from the list. Again, it depends on the flexibility or, you know, whatever of the GM, what they can and cannot allow. But again, for you as the GM, if it's you making the calls, it all goes to your comfortability level. If you feel as comfortable as we here with flavoring abilities as they come to whatever setting you might be running, then yeah, maybe disallow maybe one or two that strictly don't make sense no matter how you look at them. Or again,
No, go ahead.
No, I was
Finish
gonna
up.
say you can also cultivate it really well, in that you really don't want to see specific things in your game, and yeah, cut out 10, 20, maybe only pick instead of saying what you don't allow, make a short list of what you will allow.
Well, that's what I was going to get to, especially for new GMs. So you don't overwhelm yourself. I would say it's a good practice to maybe put a certain number of foci that you're comfortable with that fit the genre. As a new GM, I would also say do it. If you're trying to tell a specific type of story, like I was just saying, Girls to Towering Heights, wouldn't necessarily fit a modern intrigue game, unless you wanted to add a bit of
Actually,
fantasy.
well,
I'm
yeah.
just saying, unless you want to add a tad of
I
fantasy,
was
like if you
about
were
to.
doing, I'm saying, like if you were doing, say, one of those, off the wall Gonzo old James Bond movies,
Yes.
and they were doing some genetic engineering, so you had some guy who could, grow, a couple or
Honestly,
something.
the first thing I thought of, and again, that's why I was like, oh, modern. You said modern. I know how to flavor it in modern. Is there could be a watch or something that projects a solid hologram that's bigger,
Oh
or
yeah.
something like it doesn't have to be
Well,
mutagenic or anything. Like there's so
right.
many different ways, but either way, that's neither here nor there. Oh,
I mean, I think ultimately you use the perfect word. It depends. You know, I think that I know we've been saying that a lot in this video, which is weird because we usually have pretty strong opinions on everything. But for this, it absolutely depends. I could go either way. You know, like if I'm running fantasy or if I'm running, supers or if I'm running, something on the Gonzo side, then most foci and focus are on the
Every
table.
foci are on the table.
Yeah, but I totally understand as a player if a GM wants to narrow it down to a set specific foci because their narrative only will allow those foci, make sense for their story. Then I totally accept that, and I respect a GM's wishes on him being able to craft the story he wants to tell. Right. With that being said, I think there's many ways you could go about doing it. You could have a list, and when you in the session zero, when you discuss with the player, don't normally shoot it down because it wasn't on your list per se. Hear them out because maybe they can figure out a way to actually make it work in your game that you hadn't thought of beforehand. And that's happened to me. Like, like I'll have a, like when they initially pitched the idea of focus to me, I'd be like, I don't think that's going to work. And then when we sit there and talk about it, they'll pitch their idea a different way, and I'll be like, oh, you know what? That does sound pretty cool. Let's rock with that. So like it really, really does depend
yeah.
on the GM and on the player being able to adapt it and narratively into your story.
It's definitely an awesome point to make. Because I feel like especially if a GM is presenting a pre-made list of approved foci, it could be intimidating to some newer players. Like, oh, I guess I can only use these guys. What's the sense in arguing? It's not really arguing. It's just more presenting your case and your perspective. Kind of similar to when you're in a game and you're trying to do something like maybe with the major effect or with the player intrusion or something of that nature. There's nothing wrong with having that dialogue about, hey, I know it's not on the list, but maybe it would make sense in this sense, and then explain your point of view and including it in the setting or genre. Because again, like even as again, if you're the GM in that situation, you shouldn't just shoot it down, because it's always good to have an open mind and to see things from a different perspective that you might not have seen before.
And also, to play the devil's advocate here, there's nothing wrong with the GM even after their pitch to say no. Like I'll give you a perfect example. God doesn't love us anymore. It's the zombie one shot that I've run multiple times on the server. I had this one guy insisting that he wanted to play a robot, and I'm like, dude, no matter how many times you're gonna pitch this idea, it just doesn't make sense for a modern era zombie game. Like there is no robots. It just doesn't make sense. Like I really want you to play a character you want to play, but maybe save that character for another game because it totally contradicts the story I'm trying to tell. Like there's nothing wrong, it's not taking away agency from players for you to stand firm and say, "Hey, this is the story I want to tell." You know, like work within the confines of my story, and I guarantee you, we're gonna have a good time. I'm gonna give you a fun story. So there's no wrong way on either side of that discussion.
Right.
100%.
Right, and
You,
that I think that's just like it in the whole in the nutshell. Like when we were saying, you know about having that pre-approved list to give your players, because it it's still the story you're trying to tell, even though it's an interactive story. Players have a whole lot of agency and control in the story, but as a GM, you should have your final say because ultimately you've got to run this thing. You know,
and
and,
in all fairness, it also works well because if it didn't, then MCG wouldn't be putting it in every book they publish. You know, if you look at the when they break down in both in expanded worlds, in worlds numberless and strange, and in the CSR, they give you suggested foci for all their micro settings and genres because it actually works. You know what I
Yeah,
right,
mean?
and
absolutely.
there's even that checklist I believe in the back of
Mm.
the CSR for like the campaign making or whatever. It's like
Yep, it is
this this
there's a
focus, you can't
campaign
use this, blah
checklist.
blah blah. Yeah, it's
Mm.
super
Uh,
super relevant.
uh, Another benefit to having a pre-approved list is that the GM now fully understands what every one of those foci does because they had to read those foci in order to create the list. So if you pick one of those foci, the GM will also be able to help you flesh out, the flavoring of that foci and what the abilities do. So as a player, if you don't fully remember your ability, the GM had read the focus beforehand. He or she will be able to help you out there as well.
Right. Yeah, and that campaign design worksheet is a very good friend. It allows you to pick what descriptors you want available in your world, your foci available, a spot for notes. It's really a great tool, you know. And honestly, don't be afraid to use those things. Like Anthony said, don't be afraid to say no. Don't be afraid to run your game.
Or at least have a conversation about it.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
Absolutely.
You just mentioned something that I didn't even realize. Have you ever restricted descriptors? I know we're not talking. This isn't a descriptive video, but I don't think I've ever have um restricted a descriptor. That's
I
interesting.
can see cause for it for certain ones, such as like the very meta y ones, kind of like lucky or doomed, or like that kind of add a kind of weird element to what the
Mm.
character brings to the table.
Yeah.
But other than that, I feel like you could flavor any descriptor to fit any setting or anything like that. None of them complicate the rules or anything.
To be honest, I never even thought of that.
Yeah, the
Well,
only
I
You
mean,
know,
but again, you got to remember something. We're all very, very comfortable in our own skin and very free form. I mean, we virtually don't, deny foci. Like you said, the guy wanted to play a robot. Had that been any other game, you'd have been fine. Play the robot. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? So
pretty
it,
much.
it's just that we don't think about. But I mean, I could see it. I could actually see it if I wanted to run a very focused game. If I was looking to do something kind of specific, if I was running, you know, I don't know, let's say, a really heroic, epic type adventure. No, I don't necessarily think I want a person, being overly lucky, or necessarily doomed. You know what I'm saying? But, it is what it is. I mean, we could always find a way to put it in there. I mean, so should I go on to the next one, guys?
Uh,
Or no, that's you, Anthony.
yeah. The next question is me, and it's actually it's your question. 'Cause I think you have the most experience in this, really. But how do you create your very own focus from scratch, guys?
Well,
Before I let D jump in, like this is just the opening. It's on page 80 of the CSR, the revised CSR. But I'll just read what the opening paragraph of this chapter because it kind of lead into our discussion a little better. But it basically says every focus has an overarching style, whether that's exploration, energy manipulation, or simply dealing with a lot of damage in combat. These broad classifications are called focus categories. Each focus category has an overarching theme, followed by selection guidelines, excuse me, that describe how to choose abilities from chapter 9 at each tier, from tier 1 to tier 6. The newly created focus should be named in the form of a verb, like controls beast or abides in stone. For instance, a fire using focus created by the following guidelines in the energy manipulation focus category might be called bears a halo of fire, or a sample foci, or which is the sample foci in this chapter. Alternatively, a fire using focus should get an all new name like Stokes, the Flame of the Apocalypse. That's an awesome name for a foci, by the way. Or lights fire with a thought.
Yeah, so let me hop in here before Dean goes on his rundown, because again, he is the most knowledgeable on this. He's probably done it the most out of all of us.
I feel a rant coming.
But again, I always like to approach it from the novice perspective, because I'm the novice of the group, basically. But when I see this section here on how to create your own focus, I don't necessarily see how to create one from scratch, even though it provides guidelines for it throughout page 82 to I think 94 or whatever, 93, before it starts breaking down the categories of the abilities. It does break down how to make one from scratch, but me personally, I use this section as a guideline on how to customize an already existing focus, because I'm a novice again. See, I don't know again how maybe one ability might play with another ability down the line, like your first tier ability down to tier 6. But me personally, I think, hey, this focus would be much cooler if tier 2 was actually this ability and tier 3 was actually this ability. Like this, then it would be awesome. And then I would rename it myself, as I was stating earlier in the video, and then it becomes my own thing. But again, this section is super helpful in that regard, because it does break down everything, especially on page 95, where it has the ability categories and relative powers. It lets you, again, let's say you're in my scenario, you're trying to replace your tier 2, your tier 3 abilities. Now you know where to look for. Now you have like a relative power section to look at, and you also have a category breakdown based on what focus you're trying to adjust here, whether it be energy manipulation, combat heavy, social heavy, whatever have you. It breaks it down for you, makes it super easy to look up abilities that might fit that concept you're trying to put out there.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. The focus category section on page 82 and the abilities category section with the relative powers on page 95. Yes, I totally agree with you that you're utilizing the all the abilities they have in the book to plug and play to create your own focus. You're not creating it from scratch, but technically you are still creating your own focus. It's like Minecraft. They give you all the tools, but you still got to build the mansion. You know what I mean? So I would argue that they give you the tools to create your own focus, and this is extremely well designed. It just by the way the categories are built out, and not only from like they break the groups of focus into like focus categories, right? But they also break the abilities separate, so you can mix and match both those different charts to create endless combinations. So that 20-25 pages, you could probably just build maybe another 500 new foci from focus from just those pages.
Probably even more than that. Yeah. Math is crazy. It seems like just because of, again, you have 6 tiers to play with, and then you have all these different abilities. There's just an endless number of ways to mix and match these abilities, and it's just awesome, because again, we're coming from the original Cypher core book, where it wasn't broken down like that at all. Like these sections just straight up didn't exist, and it kind of opens it up to like when we were looking at this original Cypher core book. I wasn't, again, I'm the novice of the group. I wasn't of the mindset of like, I want to adjust this. I want to change this extensively. It was like maybe I'll make one tweak here or there, and that was it. Because there wasn't really a section like this. But now that there's this section, I'm like, oh yeah, I can change ability here. I can change it. Like it opens up so many avenues of thought with how it's broken down. You love to see it.
It also shows you the simplicity of the system. It shows you how modular the system. You know, the system all the way down to its core is modular. You know, granted, I think that you might be able to create some broken and some either lopsided foci if you don't really pay attention to what you're actually doing. But it's still fun creating those broken characters, even if they don't work. You know, there's just enjoyment all across the board for me. This thumbs up.
Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, like we said, we're coming from the original book. This revised CSR put everything in an entirely new perspective. Because I created bunches of foci from scratch, especially for the superhero in the superhero department. And what I did was it was a labor of love. I spent probably 3 or 4 days just reading over the focus section in the original book, and I started seeing a trend in how low tier abilities were set up, and then it was mid tier, and then there was high tier, and then when this book came out, it just turned everything on its ear. It actually changes the entire approach that I use when creating foci now, because now I can look at other foci that are similar to an idea or a concept or whatever the case may be. So, this first section, where we talk about what is this? The focus categories just are so useful, because you start thinking about exactly what that category or what category your focus that you want to build falls in. And then after you look at that, then you can go to the ability section, and they have it broken down even further. So it's, to me, it's like, this is like candy. This is like, I'm in a candy store, and somebody said you can have as much as you want, eat as much as you want, and you're never going to get sick, and that's how I feel with it. Like you guys were saying about the number of foci you could build just from the CSR alone. I'd actually have to count the number of abilities they give you in each category and everything else, and probably do a stupid math formula to figure it out, because the possibilities are absolutely baffling, because and I mean, I know we're talking about focus, but this even allows you to customize types as well, to build custom types. It's it's bonkers.
What's funny, like we always say, like we always argue, oh, I wish there was more superpowers to do supers, but this section alone lets you create so many different types of superhero characters if
Absolutely.
you want to run a supers game.
Absolutely.
Every type of high fantasy you want to do, you'll be able to create a focus to fit
horror,
this.
any horror genre,
Yeah.
any genre in general. I mean, when you really sit down and look at it, any genre in general. I mean, I was just looking the other day. I was just looking at. I always love looking at the ability section, which starts on page 95. And when you get to that first section and it says attack, and it's like the low tier abilities. Those low tier abilities just scream at me because they're so cool.
Mhm.
When you think about it, I mean, you're going to create a focus, and the guy gets a heads up display, or he gets an unarmed fighting style or something like that. These are so many little cool nuanced things that you get to throw together, to build this new focus. And they're not, like I get it, what Anthony's saying about that first ability. That first ability does, add something. But like, Al said, if you don't like that first ability and you need it to do whatever, get it and then change the name of the doggone focus, because then you're doing something different. And I guarantee the more you play, the more you're going to start seeing nuanced things that you want to tweak here or you want to tweak there. And the best thing about it is if you start understanding that it's not that difficult, talk to your GM. You and your GM can have a conversation about how to tweak it. I mean, Al, you had the best example ever when we were talking before, when you were talking about your fantasy game, and your guy, was a paladin basically, and now he's not a paladin anymore. He kind of went to the other side,
Yep.
and that was brilliant in the manner that you modified his focus. You know, flipped it on its ear for it to be exactly what you needed in your game. And what he needed too.
Maybe we should ask our viewers to give us some examples of names of foci, of focuses, and we'll
We'll
craft
build
them
them. We'll build them
just
for him.
just by the name.
Oh, that
Sure,
sounds fun, actually.
I would love
But
to do it.
just to piggyback off what you were saying, about what I did in my home game, yeah, that's absolutely correct. I thought it was cool again because he was basically falling out of grace of becoming a paladin, or excuse me, being a paladin, and becoming. I don't think we gave it a formal name, but in essence, a Dark Knight. It just made sense to me to just basically mirror or like flip what his abilities did. And again, like we were saying earlier, him as the player came to me with suggestions on what he thought like the flip should do. Like what, like for
Well,
example, alleviate.
right.
Like I thought alleviate at first should just be a poison because again that makes sense to me. But alleviate being a tier 2 ability, there's so many things at tier 1 that are already kind of like a poison. He was like, it kind of feels a little weak, blah blah. And then there was that discussion about how we handled it. And again, it goes. This is a case by case type thing. Like you might not necessarily do the same thing I did, where I did what narratively made sense, for the situation because he was a paladin who lost.
Let me interrupt you for a second now. Um, First of all, tell everybody what his original focus was.
Oh yeah, so his original focus was works miracles. And again, you guys, if you know the book, it's just a typical healer type focus. It gives you healing touch or whatever. Tier 2, you get alleviate. But
And what did you change it to? Give him the
yeah,
new name.
that's a cool name. What I changed the name to after flipping all the abilities around was manipulates malice. Because again, instead of working miracles with their hands, they're now working kind of malice with their hands. It's like negative touch or whatever, draining touch or whatever have you. So yeah, healing touch became a draining touch. Alleviate is now a poison. That's something else that I forget at the moment. And yeah, it was just awesome because again, that wasn't my thing alone. I had that discussion with my player. There was that back and forth about how we think his. Now at this point, it's a custom focus. So at this point, how his custom focus should work going forward. And again, it's awesome to have those talks.
So,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah, it was. Like I said, it was great. And here's the thing. Monty Cook games. Cypher, the CSR basically, just breaks it down for you so beautifully. When you're creating a focus, two low tier powers, two mid tier powers, and two high tier powers. Tiers 1 and 2 are low tier powers, 3 and 4 mid tier powers, and 5 and 6 are high tier powers. You know, there's, and then when you look at the foci, the established foci, you can take inspiration from there because some foci give you a couple of abilities, like shreds the walls of the world, which is like I said, I love the that focus. But at first level, at tier 1, you get phase sprint and disrupting touch. But you have to see how they work together. So there are some times that you can give a couple of abilities at first level. There are other times that you can give a choice. There are other times that not only do you can have an extra ability, but you might have to give up a type ability. It's all in allowing, or should I say, it's all in more or less seeing how it fits, how it plugs into your game.
And oh,
because go ahead, Al.
no, I was gonna say with custom focus creation again. What you were saying with the mimicking of what your pre-established focus do already. It's not just abilities. There's also maybe you get a low level ability and also a stat boost. Some of them give stat boosts. Some of them give stat reductions. And it just goes again to try to flavor that focus a little bit more. Um, yeah, it's just I just want to throw it out there because it's always not. It's not. I mean, it's very rare that you get a stat boost or a stat adjustment in a focus, but it is something you can throw into a focus to try to, what you call it. Not only that, but inabilities as well.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like inabilities, like even though again they're a negative trait to what you call. I feel like again I can't think of any off the top of my head that give inabilities, but that's an awesome tool to use to flavor the focus a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that the way that it's written and designed in the book, it actually shows people how easy it is to create a focus. I think most people, originally they'd be like, "Oh, I don't want to create this myself. This is a lot of work." But they break it down step by step and show you how easy it is, and have all the abilities. Even break it down into categories for you. So it's pretty much cut and dry. You know, it doesn't take all day to create a focus.
It's like what I was saying earlier. Me being the novice GM with the first Cypher core book, I didn't really think to like, hey, I don't want to really make, but it seems like a lot of work. I have to like think of what everything does and blah blah blah. Like, of course, in my mind, being how I am, I already saw the abilities as building blocks. So I saw abilities from one focus that I could swap in with another one from a different focus and kind of make my own focuses that way, or foci. But with the new book, now it's like what Dean was saying. You're a kid in a candy shop. These are like basically Legos at this point, spelt out for you. Like, hey, these are the L piece Legos. These are the block piece Legos. You fit them together and you make a focus, and it's just so awesome to see as someone again. I'm a pretty creative guy, but I'm also newer to all this, so I don't really think of things or what with the original book. I never really considered an ability, even though it's obvious from tier 1 to tier 6 that there's a low power, a mid power, a high. That's just something that didn't register to me. I just thought like, hey, it's a tier 1 ability. Hey, it's a tier 2 ability. I never thought to like put them in these power categories, and it's so helpful with the creative process when trying to make your own.
Right.
It's A plus.
I was gonna say, because you had brought up, you couldn't think of a focus that gave, off the top of your head, but I really was looking at Rage is a perfect example. At tier 1, you go into a combat frenzy, and that's the first ability called frenzy. But when you're frenzy, you can't use intellect points, so that's a hindrance. It's like you can't use intellect points. So that means even if you had an intellect edge or something, you'd get your edge bonus, but you couldn't spend any points to use effort. Which would be like crazy, right? That's that, but it's big because you gain might edge and you gain speed edge. So there's that give and take.
Yeah,
So
there's definitely a ton of different ways to go about flavoring things with focus. Um, and again, it could even be that I can't think of, again, I'm positive there are, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I feel like there are some at tier 1 that don't even give an ability. Like some just give a couple stats and maybe a
yeah,
skill,
well,
and that's it. A
well,
couple skills.
there's enhanced body, you know, which
Mm.
only gives you additional stats. Tier 1, if you take Transcends Humanity, that one only gives you stat bonuses. You get 6 more
I mean,
points.
there's a lot that don't give you an ability. Like
Right. It don't give
there-
you a
there's
direct
some that
ability.
give you
Skills
wealth.
or
There's
or
some that
that.
give you contacts.
There's some that give you skills, you
Yeah,
Or
know,
a follower.
yeah, yeah.
or a follower. As a matter of fact, I mean, really, if you really want to kind of get technical on that, if you look at the focus categories, if you look in the margin, it actually gives you a listing of ally use focuses or foci. So each category right in the sidebar, you know, it gives you um examples, so you can actually look at those when you decide what kind of thing you want to build. You know, so I think that's kind of cool too. So it's like, um, energy manipulation. They have absorbs energy, bears a halo of fire, dances with dark matter, rides in light, and thunders, wears a sheen of ice. Right in the sidebar, so you can go on ahead and delve
See,
in.
and see examples of something that's close to what you're looking to do, but not
Exactly.
quite it. So you could look at all those as an example and say, okay, I like the way this is. This tier 2 ability. I like this tier 4 ability. Let me see if I can figure out a way to create my version of that.
I really think that's, and I really dig it because, like I said, I mean, from a person who created a ton of foci early on using the old methodology, this thing here has just flipped everything on its ear in my entire approach. Um, Now I find myself looking at the CSR. Um, I find myself looking at the CSR for the abilities that are already there and wondering, should I just take one out of the book or should I make something entirely new? And now it's that kind of conversation as opposed to just sitting there, sweating real hard trying to figure out what to do. So,
Yeah.
any other last thoughts, guys?
No.
I think we kind of touched on this pretty well. I think we ready to move on.
No, I mean,
All right. Well,
I think that's the end of the video then. It's been awesome talk. Um, just one thing to take away as my final thought is, again, I think Anthony's the one who said it. Don't be afraid to, like, if there's an approved list or disapproved list of foci or whatever for your game, don't be afraid to pick something and present your argument, present your case. The worst thing the GM could tell you is no, and you're back to square one with the approved list or disapproved list. But like I said with my story, with how I was crafting, my custom, focus for this for my player, having that discussion can open the eyes of the GM or whoever into changing their perspective or adding to it, and that's never a bad thing. Even if ultimately they still tell you no, you still helped with broadening the horizons of this individual or individuals that you're having the discussion with, and that's never a bad thing.
I think my final thought would be that even though the focus is the most important part of the character sentence, because it's essentially what your job is, your being, your purpose in the narrative. Um, have a concept first. Uh, I think I can't preach it on the mountaintops high enough that if you come up with a concept first, your character creation is going to go a lot easier. There's going to be a lot less speed bumps, regardless if you're creating a foci from scratch, you're adapting your existing foci, or using a foci straight out the book. If you have a concept, all three of those methods is going to be a lot easier for you in the long run.
and my final thoughts on this would be very simple. Uh, Look at the book, dive right in with both feet, enjoy it, enjoy the process. Look at the approved lists that they give you for like each genre. Play with it. Don't be afraid. Because the only thing that'll happen is that, guess what, you'll figure it out, or you figure out that you don't like it, or you figure out you do like it. I just like the exploration and the discovery and the creativity. So that's my final thought.
And like we said earlier, if you want us to create custom foci, give us some names of foci, put them in the chat below, or put it on the Cypher Unlimited Discord server. We'll absolutely love to do that. I think that's a fun experiment that all three of us would love to try.
All over it. I'm like so there. So please do it, people. Give me the opportunity to make some more foci.
Especially
And
me,
we
who
and,
has really no experience in it. I think
Yeah.
it'd be a
and the thing
fun,
about
fun
it,
little
Yeah, I know,
experiment.
Dean. All three of us, us watching you do it. Dean's like, yeah, give it to me. I'm gonna do it.
well, no, I was gonna say not only that though. but we'll make sure we do it, and we'll do it right from the book. We'll use all abilities and everything straight from the book.
Yep.
Yep. And just to touch, this was a great video. If you like videos like this and the content we produce, you know, please join the Cypher Unlimited Discord server. The link is down below. We have over 3,100 members. We have games being run every day. Yes, I said every day. There's chat rooms on every major setting book, including the non-sponsored Monte Cook game setting books like Vert and Shotguns and Sorcery. So please join us. You want to talk about Monte Cook games, you want to talk about Cypher System, you want to talk about Invisible Sun, No Thank You Evil, this is the site for you. Please join us. And if you like us and want to support us in any way, God knows why, but you can always go to our online store and get these cool swag like me and Dean have on. You know, every little bit helps. It helps us you know, whatever little bit we make, it helps us with a course like Zoom course and stuff like that for us to continue to bring content like this. Or if you want to give us a tip, you can tip us on Ko-fi. The link will be down below as well. Once again, our content will always be free. You know, you don't have to do this to watch this content, but please join the Cypher Unlimited Discord server. We want to be your friend and we want to chat with you, and we love you guys.
And we want to game with you.
Yeah, and you know, lastly, you know, be sure to hit like, share, subscribe that out, hit that little bell button notifications to know when we you know, produce out new videos or send them out. And yeah, thank you all so much for watching, and from us at the CU, we will see you later.